Black cisgender heterosexual identified men are killing Black trans women. Black ones.
We are not talking about it in the church.
Those street guys are already engineers. If they're mixing drugs and stuff together, they're chemical engineers.
If you're just like, yeah, let's kill 50 cops just because, you know, that's only a fraction of the Black people that they killed. Wait, now you're talking about my wife.
For those of you who are joining in, we are talking about just the housing in the Black community and owning property, why it's important, and how to get yourself in there.
When I think of financial literacy, I just don't think of the classroom work. I think some of it is practical application.
I'm scared, especially, you know, calling them to arms, talking about poll workers or poll watchers. That is rooted in history of voter suppression and intimidation.
Joe Biden needs to make that a part of his educational platform.
Call that shit out.
I don't see much value in you speaking in tongues, and yet when you speak in English, you don't say nothing for my people.
Many of the reasons why we're dying is because of the conditions we live under that cause our health to be so bad, and that cause it's the food, it's the water, it's clean that shit up first.
When their fathers had prostate cancer, I had like a 150% chance of getting cancer, being diagnosed with cancer. I had a friend that did a raw vegan diet, 20 years remission, had thyroid cancer, never had surgery. I'm like, that's what I'm doing.
This week in Black People Shit, how I survived without chemo, a Black man's fight with cancer. I'm your host, Chryste Pharris. In a report done by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Minority Health, African Americans have the highest rate of cancer of all racial groups and have a higher mortality and lower survival of every other race or ethnic group. African American men are 1.8 times more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer and 2.2 times more likely to die from cancer than a white man. Today we have with us Will Thompson, a celebrity fitness expert and cancer survivor, who is here to tell us all about how he fought with cancer without chemo and won. Also with me is actress and LA Dodgers head cheerleader Janora McDuffie and writer and vintage t-shirt collector Abdul Majid. Let me bring everybody in. Hey! No, nothing. So, everybody out there, please don't forget to subscribe. If you guys are on here now, do a Facebook watch right now, watch party. Make sure that you like and share this episode. And if you have any comments or questions on today's conversation, join us in the chat because we love to hear from you. So, getting started. This week, the Senate confirmed Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court by a vote of 52 to 48, making her Donald Trump's third Supreme Court nominee in 4 years. How do you think her confirmation will impact us in the near future? What do you guys think? Janora?
You know, it's really painful. I mean, it's all bullshit to begin with. Like, how is her confirmation even going to take place, period? Mm-hmm. Like eight days before the election, where Garland, Obama's pick was 8 months and they shut him down. So the hypocrisy makes my blood boil. And then the choice in itself, I feel like we are going backwards in time and not forward. In fact, Kendra O'Neill from North Carolina had, hope she chimes in today, but she had said that she equated Amy Coney Barrett to Serena Waterford on The Handmaid's Tale.
Ooh,
today,
yes.
Right? Today, I saw a post on Instagram where it said, with her confirmation, we're back in the closet, back in the kitchen, back of the bus, and back alley abortions, all back because of her. And what is settling, including her nomination, which you pointed out, Chryste, is his third pick, are all the things we don't talk about underneath that are his almost 200 federal justice picks, and overwhelmingly are all conservative white men. So we do have reason to take pause with these changes.
I think it does her a disservice because it doesn't give her any leverage, she's always going to go down in history as an asterisk, this is the one who came in because of Donald Trump. And I just feel like that she's going to be used and abused, and she's not going to really be able to have the power that she thinks that she's going to have. She's not going to be able to fight it. So I think it does her a disservice, and the seat that she's taking, I'm really saddened for her. That's my biggest thing.
Shoot, I ain't sad for her. I'm sad for the damn country.
Well, that too, but I would have given her maybe a little bit of credit if it hadn't been the situation, but I'm just afraid that she's gonna take a lot of the things away that we fought for a long time. So how about you, Abdul?
I am not as concerned because if you look at the last few Supreme Court justice decisions, the new Judge Kavanaugh has sided more with the liberal justices. And then if you look at the future plans for if the Democrats win the Senate, and they keep the House, and they get the presidency, that they look like they're trying to stack the benches with more Supreme Court justice to balance things out. They probably pass a law trying to add more Supreme Court justice to the seat. So, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but because if we do it, then they're going to turn around, then they're going to do it. So, so I'm not as concerned with her. I see her stance on abortion. I see her stance on the Obamacare, Affordable Health Care Act. I see her stance on a few other things, and they are sort of draconian, and they're sort of back. They asked her in her confirmation things to the effect of she stated that things to the effect that her religion would not take place or take a part into her decision making and this, that, and the third, which I don't truly believe. But I'm actually not as concerned as a lot of people are. I think that she's going to do a lot of things, but I think she's going to get a lot of pushback. And then the other factor is that I think that if you win the election, I think Clarence Thomas is going to retire. I honestly think I think he wanted to retire like last year, and they wouldn't let him. But now that they stacked it with 3, I think he might retire this time around, which gives Democrats a chance to put somebody in there. And a lot of this stuff is, before we get to the Supreme Court, a lot of this stuff is local circuit court judges. So I think we need to make a plan to get some of those guys out of there and replace the ones that Trump just put in there with some new ones. So
right. Well,
so if we take care of the local, the federal won't be as bad, in my opinion.
Tim says a 6-3 conservative majority does not represent the country. The Dems will need to update the judicial act to protect the independence of the Supreme Court. You can't put no big words like that. My little dyslexic self can't pronounce that, Tim.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Janora. I know you.
I was just going to say, I was going to piggyback on what Tim said, and let's get some changes to the court. Period. It's all outdated. I think having a lifetime term limit, like what you were thinking 40 years ago, doesn't even exist anymore. Like I disagree with the term limit, and I also think that it should be expanded. So I look forward to those changes taking place. And Abdul, I'm going to give you a little bit of pushback because you're not so concerned, but that's because you're a man. Or that's because you're straight. So I feel like your rights aren't on the table like other people's rights.
Crazy?
No, I am not crazy. You are a man, aren't you?
I am a man. I'm a man, but I'm a black man. Let's not take the black part off of it.
I'm not saying you're not part of a marginalized community, but I'm also saying that you can't
category. I'm more likely to be affected by than you being gay, woman, or empirical fact. I can prove it.
Okay, prove to me you got a womb and some fallopian tubes, please. I think everybody would love to see that.
I'm not in that statistical category. I'm talking about the death rate. I'm talking about incarceration rates. I'm talking about homeless rates. I'm talking about educational rates. I'm talking about the dropout in school rates. I'm talking about the prison to jail pipeline. We can go down this list one at a time, and I'm adversely affect more than any woman or any gay person. So you're out of your mind if you think this doesn't affect me.
Now, I'm not out of my mind, but I'm not disagreeing that it doesn't affect you at all. I'm just saying that I think it's a lot easier for a man to say.
That's not what I'm saying. No, it isn't. Yeah, I'm a man, but I'm a black man. There's a distinct difference. We're not marching in the street now because some gay person got killed. We're marching because a black man got his knee put on his neck and murdered, which is I'm more likely to be affected than you. I'm more likely to be affected by the cops than you. I'm 6 times more likely to go to jail than you. I'm 4 times more likely to die from some cancer or heart disease than you. I have a lower mortality rate than you. What are you talking about?
I am saying that I think the same reason that men are easily saying that they are not, that Roe versus Wade, what Abdul, damn it. What I'm trying to say is maybe we're saying the same thing. We're just saying the same thing differently. In no way am I disagreeing that you as a black man are not affected by the decisions of the Supreme Court or federal court, or all of the local elections for that matter. I'm not disagreeing with you at all, Abdul. I just am tired of men telling me how I'm supposed to feel or taking what taking things that belong to women and you saying or not acknowledging how it affects me as a woman, or it affects me as part of the LGBT community. And maybe you're coming at me in this way because I'm not acknowledging how it affects you as a black man.
No,
I think overall, though, what we're saying is the same thing, which is a frustration with the justice system and how people are picked and chosen to represent us.
No, you're taking everything I said out of context. I didn't say I wasn't concerned about her taking part. I said I was not concerned about taking her part because Clarence Thomas might retire. The fact that they're going to stack the benches, the fact that they probably will add more. I didn't say it didn't affect me or that I wasn't concerned with it. I said I wasn't concerned with it because all of these fail-safes that are in place to make sure things don't go in a particular way. It wasn't just solely the fact that, oh, she's in there, her decisions don't affect me. No, I said I wasn't concerned because of A, B, C, and D. It wasn't just the fact that I wasn't concerned because she was in there.
All right. I'm going to let you give one little thing and then we're going to move on because I want to make sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And my last point is, Abdul, I think the fail-safes aren't working. The death of one woman should not, and God rest her soul, but the death of one woman should not have upheaved the potential rights of millions of people. That's not democracy. And that's what I'm saying. So maybe I'm disagreeing with you on that level, is that I don't feel comfortable with these fail-safes because clearly one dude who did not get the popular vote just stacked the court in the conservatives' favor. So we're fighting on the same team, Abdul. You're just team black man and I'm team gay, team woman.
No, I'm saying that the fail-safes had nothing to do with them cheating. That's a completely different conversation. They cheated to get their first person in there. They cheated to get their last person in there. Has nothing to do with the fail-safes. It has to do with them cheating. That's a different conversation.
But wouldn't a fail-safe stop a cheat? Like, that's what I'm saying. That's the part that's not working.
The rules are the rules. They just cheated. Now the fail-safes come in place when you get a Democratic legislative house, and they can counteract the things that they did. They can counteract some of the decisions that were made under the Trump situation. That's the point I'm making. I'm saying, but
let's show up and vote. Let's show up and make sure that it is a house in favor of the things that the people are in favor for.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we just had our discussion on here, which I just think it was a little bit of miscommunication. We got Tangerine over here. You stumping her, Abdul, and Preach Abdul, and y'all both.
Damn right, Tangerine.
Why are we debating who has it worse? I agree with you on that one. Not yet. And Abdul, come on. And then of course, Tim said, that's why I did it. Thank you, Tim, for my whole dyslexic stuff. So with all that being said, we're going to make a brief. Tim said he needs a drink. We're going to do a little brief little thing about this week. Also, Jared Kushner received some heavy criticism after an interview with Fox News when he was asked about the President Platinum Plan for African Americans, that President Trump's politics are the politics that can help people break out of the problems that they're complaining about, but he can't want them to be successful more than they want to be successful. And did you find this offensive? Absolutely. I found it offensive. Somebody who is privileged, who has money, who has come from money, and obviously they don't allow him to talk for this particular reason because he's talking out of his neck. So do you want to briefly say anything about that, Abdul?
I'm not very surprised when the racist acts racist.
Okay, and there you go. Okay, how about you, Janora?
Yeah, I'm not surprised he said it, and he said it so casually, like, you know, of course, and not even recognizing what he said, which to me is a reflection of everybody he's representing and speaking for. It's this underlying, overt, unapologetic racism, and saying it so easily is a reflection that this systematic racism does exist. So for them to not acknowledge it is just like, come on. Yeah. And the tweet that said it best is from California Rep. Barbara Lee. Similar to what you said, Chrystee, he is the face of white privilege and nepotism. He does not want to change our racist system because he benefits from it. Mm-hmm. He is the last person that should lecture the Black community on the value of hard work. So I thought she said it best. And so it's just continuing to baffle me why people support him and that administration that look like us.
And I just want to acknowledge the fact that Abdul just used a big old huge jug of water, you know. Abdul is our one that doesn't want the lighting. He don't want no microphones. And he just gonna drink out of a jug on our show.
I literally always drink out of the jug of water because I buy them, because that's all I drink. So I buy them like consecutively, jugs of water.
I am not mad at it. So I want to get to the reason why I'm sure a lot of people who are tuning in. Our next guest has been a fitness expert for over 25 years, and it has been featured on TV like Extra and the Discovery Health Channel's Body Challenge Hollywood, with clients ranging from Grammy Award winners, supermodels, and professional athletes. Will Thompson's talent was recognized by Men's Fitness magazine and is a part of their Ask Our Expert column. Will is also a cancer survivor and is here to tell us about his journey and how he battled cancer without chemotherapy. So please welcome Will. How are you doing, Will?
Hey.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Feeling good. Yeah. Happy to be here. Honored to be here.
Yay. So Will and I go way back. I can't even remember when we met or how we met. I think we probably met when I was yes, I remember CBS Radford. We met over there.
Yes.
And so
yes,
we've been friends a long time. And recently, the reason why I wanted him to come on the show is there's a lot of people that I know right now who are dealing with cancer. Family members that I know, friends that I know. And I was around when Will had a scare with cancer. And watching his journey, I just thought was so fascinating that now I send every single person to Will because I'm like, oh, they're battling with such and such. As a matter of fact, you're working with another friend of mine who the cancer cells are now shrinking. I think some of it could be from your advice that you've given, and as well as they're also going through chemo. But just tell us a little bit about your story and your cancer scare and so forth.
Oh, yeah. So I'm trying to do this without making too many crazy faces, because it was one of those situations where my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer when he was 10 years older than I was when I went to go get my PSA test. So I'm thinking, worst case scenario, it might be a 4. I have surgery. I'll make sure I find a good urology oncologist they do this laparoscopic robotic procedure that is supposed to be like minimally invasive. They're going through your belly button. I'm like, okay, I'm thinking I'm getting ahead of this. I'm 10 years out. I'm good. And so I go, I was having problems with my ear, and I got a blood test done, and my doctor got back to me. I went to the specialist, and I'm thinking they're going to send my blood work to the ear, nose, and throat specialist. Never did that. 6 months later, one friend of mine gets cancer, and go to the doctors with them, and then I go to the gym, and this other guy I know, who was my neighbor, he was a big buff dude, always working out. He looked like he lost like 50 pounds. And I'm like, so I talked to his friend, I'm like, what's going on with this? It's like, oh, you got colon cancer. I'm like, ooh, I need to get
Hey, Will, let me interrupt you for a second. Can you switch to your other headphones? Because we're getting a little bit of an issue. So I happen to be around. I'll wait for you to do that. So I happen to be around when Will was going back and forth with the doctors and trying to get the results and everything. And then, of course, when he got the message, go ahead. Wait, let me. Okay, go ahead.
Let me plug this in. Is that any better?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. That's better.
So.
Go ahead.
Long story short, go back to the doctor, I'm like, hey, let me see my PSA test. And it's a long story, but because when I called, they were like, oh, well, we'll see you next week. And I'm like, I've been waiting 6 months. I need to see what my results are. So I go in there, and the doctor, we go through all my results. Everything's good. I get to the PSA, and I'm looking at the number, and I'm confused because the number was 2,421.9, and the range is from 0 to 4. So I was concerned, to say the least. And so it was a physician's assistant. She was freaking out. She's like, oh, are you eating a lot of protein? I'm like, yeah, I always eat a lot of protein. Why? But I'm like, this can't be right. I go see long story short, go see the urology oncologist. They're like, oh, this has got to be a mistake at the lab. And I get the digital rectal ultrasound, and the PA's a little concerned, and it's just like, but we'll wait and we'll do a biopsy. That was on Monday. We'll see you on Friday. Go back on Friday to get my biopsy. That was incredibly unpleasant. And so I was like, so what's the blood work? How's the PSA looking? Is it better? It's like, no. I'm like, no. It's just like, yeah. The previous blood work was accurate, and now your PSA is 5,846.
So that means you have. Yeah, so that means you have what, stage 4? They were trying to say that you had like stage 4 cancer, prostate cancer?
Well, yeah, okay. A PSA, a normal range is 0. Anything over 2.6, concerning. Anything over 4, really want to take a look at this. Anything over 50 is considered metastatic disease. My PSA was 1,000 times that. It was 5,846. So they'd never had a patient that walked into the office with a PSA that high. My doctor said the only time he's ever seen anybody with numbers that high were in the hospital, basically in hospice. So that was devastating.
Yeah. So let me ask you, you get your diagnosis. They're basically saying that, your PSA is high. There's nothing they can do. They can't really help you. What did you do that talk about that journey of the things that you started eating and stopped eating for that part of the journey? Because I think that's what a lot of people are probably watching about. They want to know, how did you get to that portion?
Okay.
And yeah, go ahead.
Fortunately, I'm a nerd, and my mother was a registered dietitian. So when I could read as a little kid, my mother had her books up in the attic from when she was in school, and she used to teach nurses in the hospital, nutrition, and I would read these books as a kid and go, wow, food is really important. What you eat, is very important to your existence. Thank God. So through my years being a medical exercise specialist, working with a lot of different types of clients, I pay attention to, and having friends that have cancer and everything, I'm just like, oh, this is interesting. I learned, I watched some documentaries on epigenetics, which is basically we have DNA, we have epi-DNA that changes. People think, oh, your DNA doesn't change. Yes, but your epi-DNA changes due to what we eat, what we drink, the air we breathe. When people talk about living in cancer clusters and the air causing people to have cancer, it's because one of the factors is it changes your epigenetics. So knowing beforehand that, okay, if I were to ever get this diagnosis, and statistically speaking, being a Black man with a father that's had prostate cancer, I had like 150% chance of being diagnosed with cancer, I knew I was going to have to make a change. And talking to different people that have had cancer and have achieved remission, I had a friend that did a raw vegan diet, 20 years remission, had thyroid cancer, never had surgery. I'm like, that's what I'm doing. So after he told me and gave me a horrible news, I was a wreck, picked myself all off the floor. My doctor's like, you need to go to the ER, get scans, because again, as I mentioned, a PSA over 50 is considered metastatic disease. Mine was 100 times that. They wanted to see where the cancer had spread. I got lucky that it hadn't metastasized. But I had this massive, what is classified as a T4 tumor, which still puts me in that stage 4 category, because a T4 tumor is when it gets so big that it pushes into the other organs, and they will have to remove those organs to take out the tumor, which is, so my best case scenario was chemotherapy. As far as my urologist was like, there's nothing we can do. And so sent me to an oncologist. And I was just like, sent me to an ER to get the scans. I had massive tumor. I'm just like, bye-bye ribs, no more ribs.
So what did you start? What did you take out? What did you start eating? What did you start eating that helped? Because one of the things that I loved that you did do, that you told me about, was you were like, stop drinking or eating or using plastic. That was one of the major things so hence the reason why I have this big, huge thing in a glass. Yeah. And you see no more plastic. So talk about plastic and how that affects us when it comes to like prostate cancer.
Well, most cancers, the BPA is carcinogenic, but something was far more challenging. I mean, plastic is everywhere and it's challenging, but the stuff that I need to tell people that they're not going to want to hear is meat, is just cutting out animal products, because animal products, meat, dairy, produce two different growth promoting, one growth promoting hormone, IGF-1, and a growth promoting enzyme called TOR. And these two factors feed cancer cells. And when you remove them, you starve the cancer cell. There's also in fish, there's an amino acid called methionine that also feeds, because we go, well, what about fish? Fish it's still an animal protein. So I had to stop. I mean, when I went vegan, like that, people go, well, what about this or what about that? No animal products whatsoever. And then again, I try to keep my plastic or BPA-free plastic to a minimum. I try to avoid it completely, actually. And then try to get in, there are specific foods for different cancers that work very well. There are alliums, which are garlic, onions, leeks. Garlic is probably the number one best food for suppressing cancer cells in general. So And then there's cruciferous vegetables, broccoli sprouts has more concentrated, higher concentration of sulforaphane and endo-3 carbinol, which is another cancer suppressing compound. So I eat a lot of kale. Like the first year, I was eating these like massive salads. I would have probably six cups of kale every day. Green tea.
I wasn't doing green tea. Mm-hmm.
What else? I'm trying to remember. And then again, the garlic, leeks. Those foods I have every day. Every morning I have a smoothie to this day. With green tea, strawberries for cellular, not just cellular, DNA damage, my 2 cups of kale, turmeric. Turmeric is one of those amazing herbs that it's really good at killing cancer cells. I found out when I went to my oncologist that not only did my father have prostate cancer, but his father died from lung cancer and his brother died from multiple myeloma, which is a very aggressive bone cancer. However, turmeric is very effective at killing multiple myeloma cancer cells. So I eat a lot of turmeric.
So go ahead, Janora, did you have something that you wanted to ask?
Yeah. Thank you for being here. I think we don't talk about what we eat and how important it is enough. However, I struggle. So my question is, I'm still hung up on the meat part because I love my meat. And I know that there are definitely different grades and qualities. What if, Will, I said, oh, I'm only going to get it from the butcher, the most organic source that I can find. Is that allowed?
What do you mean allowed?
I mean, as in, does it come with the same carcinogen?
Does it come with the same risk factor?
Effects as maybe something from a big old plant that is pushed with hormones?
Oh, it's probably a little better. Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of factors, and this is where it gets complicated. Like chicken has arsenic and a lot in it.
Uh-oh. Go ahead, Will. Oh, we lost him a little bit.
Oh, there he goes. You back?
Yeah, I think my mother's trying to watch and clicked on the wrong link. Hi, Mom. Okay. So going back to like organic meat, and this was so sad when I feel you on this, because like initially when I got my first numbers, and then people were like, oh, don't worry, it's probably an infection. It's, it's not, that can't be that right. Those numbers can't be right. I'm just like, I have a friend who's a top tier nutritionist. He's like, just try to eat organic. Unfortunately, cancer cells don't really care, because the problem is it could be organic, but it's still going to increase your IGF levels. And it's still going to increase your TOR production. And fish still has methionine in it. It's an amino acid. It's not affected by if it's farm raised versus caught, wild caught.
So go ahead, Abdul.
So when you were diagnosed with your cancer, what were you thinking? Like, did you think you were gonna die? And if so,
hell yeah.
What made you, like, how fast a transition was it from you to I'm gonna die to no, I'm gonna battle this thing?
Oh, I mean, immediately. I didn't have a choice. I mean, the numbers that most doctors don't know, because they've never seen a patient with numbers that high. So yeah. Fortunately, I had a plan beforehand. I didn't know as much at the beginning as I know now about food. I thought I did, but I didn't. And most people don't, because they don't I would say that most people won't find themselves in this situation. They're probably not in my situation because the numbers were so astronomically high. And when I say astronomically high, if you guys read my bio, my case is now one of 77 to 100 cases that Harvard Medical School is studying, which we're in a category called the Network of Animatic Exceptional Responders. So it's the NEAR study for people that, have had crazy diagnoses and have achieved full remission without, and probably aren't really, according to the statistics, supposed to be here.
So just to follow, I'm sorry, can I just follow up on that question?
Yeah, please.
To follow up on that. So because you're on the extremes with regards to your numbers and everything, if you had someone now, whether it be if you were a friend, a family member, a coworker who told you that they're diagnosed with cancer, what would your 1, 2, 3 steps, like a concise step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this?
Step 1, that's a good question. Because it depends. There's so many variables. So I need to know as many of the variables as possible. If it's prostate cancer, what stage are you? What your Gleason score is. But I mean, the first thing I would say is go vegan. Cut out animal products immediately. It's when you start looking at the science of it, it's just one of those things that's unavoidable. And then try to increase your sulforaphane, increase cruciferous vegetables, increase alliums.
Which is what? What is it? Because you're throwing out words that I have no idea. So, thank you.
Broccoli, kale, and actually kale is really cool because kale is not only anti-carcinogenic, to put it in simpler terms, it's also antiviral. So with the coronavirus, knocking at everybody's door, kale, green tea also helps kill cancers. Well, it slows the proliferation of cancer cells. Getting those in. Oh, and D3, vitamin D3, which is something that my mother got me to take. I mentioned she was a registered dietitian when I was a kid. So about, over 10 years ago, she's like, oh, my doctor has me on vitamin D3. So I started researching the vitamin D3 and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. It helps fight colds and flus. And for the 3 years prior to me started taking the vitamin D3, I had a bacterial infection every year for 6 weeks on antibiotics. Didn't matter. Got on D3. I haven't had cold or flu since. So
wow.
Which is crazy, but it's been. And then my oncologist. So when I was going to get my blood work, being the nerd that I am, I'm like, hey, I need to check this level, my D levels, and so, which helps with my cancer also. So I definitely want to, as I would say, stop eating meat. Make sure you're taking D3. Get your D3 levels checked because we want to get them to a certain blood serum level. And then try to eat, foods. There are different foods for different cancers. Try to eat the foods. They usually try to find like a top 10 list, usually garlic, leeks, kale, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, broccoli sprouts, and then get your proteins from your legumes, lentils, chickpeas, kale, quinoa. Quinoa is not really a great protein source, but it's a great grain alternative to rice that does have protein in it, and it's also low glycemic. So people that were eating brown rice because they're like, oh, I want to eat a low glycemic carbohydrate, quinoa is a much better option for that. And I don't know if I mentioned earlier about the arsenic in chicken. Mm-hmm. Another reason why I don't eat chicken. I was like, what? My friend was like, yeah, you got to be careful about chicken from Mexico. I'm like, what's wrong with chicken from Mexico? It's got, they feed the chicken arsenic to keep the parasites off of them. Come to find out, they feed chickens in Mexico arsenal. In the United States, they have 2 antibiotics that are arsenic-based antibiotics that they're injecting our chickens with to do the same thing. So let me just. No.
Go ahead. Finish. Go ahead.
So I was like, okay, what about grain-fed chicken? That's when I found out about the rice. I'm like, well, rice has arsenic in it. I'm like, you gotta be kidding. You gotta be kidding me. And brown rice has 80% more arsenic than white rice. So if you have grain-fed chicken that's fed this organic brown rice, it's still got a ton of arsenic in it. So
wow.
Yeah.
So
quinoa definitely.
No. Go ahead. Keep finishing.
A much better alternative.
So let me just say, just for all of you guys who are joining in a little bit later, they might have come in late. Will is a professional trainer. He's trained a lot of celebrities, and he was diagnosed with prostate cancer a couple of years ago. And around the same time that he was diagnosed, I had a breast cancer scare where I found a lump on my breast. And it was at the same time that we had just buried my big brother from another mother, Thomas, and Michael Ajakwe, the writer, Michael Ajakwe. And so all in the same week, all this information came. And since prostate cancer and like fibroids and all that kind of stuff all kind of have the same journey, like as far as the things that we're eating that feed off of the stuff. Will told me to stop using plastic, which I used a lot of plastic, cooking stuff in plastic, putting stuff in plastic. Also, he told me to eat differently. I went on a raw food diet for about almost a year. It was like 11 months. And all I did was just eat raw foods forever. And so I know that was one of the things that that William did. So I just want to make sure that we catch everybody up. Natalie says, hi, William, you may have mentioned this already, but are you saying vegetables like kale should be eaten uncooked? I do eat cooked kale and broccoli. Uncooked is another story. Do you want to answer that?
So, okay. Hey, cuz. Anyways, that's my cousin.
Okay.
So kale, broccoli, as I mentioned earlier, one of the key things about kale, broccoli sprouts is sulforaphane that's in these cruciferous vegetables. So when the sulforaphane isn't originally active in those foods, you need to either bite it, blend it, chop it to release an enzyme called myrosinase, which then releases the sulforaphane. When you cook it, the more you cook it, the more you neutralize that sulforaphane. So raw is better. What you can do sometimes is put mustard seed powder on there, and that has myrosinase in it, which will help release the sulforaphane. On cooked, like if I go out and I have cooked greens or whatever, it's handy to keep some like mustard seed powder and put it on there to help try to get as much sulforaphane out of it. But yeah.
Were you taking any supplements while you eating the raw food? Were you taking any supplements, or were you just completely raw food and
vitamin D3?
Other than that, there was no other minerals, because I know that I don't know if you probably work with understand the work of Dr. Sebi and his philosophy, which is very similar to your philosophy. He kind of always talks about taking making sure you get your minerals and things of that nature. So I'm just asking, was there any other minerals or any other substitute that you were taking other than vitamin D?
Well, I take B12 because you can't get B12 from plants. As I take a B12 supplement like once a week, but that's about it. Because if I eat everything I'm supposed to eat, then it'll be covered. Yeah.
So, because I'm gonna let Janora jump in a second. But I do want to ask. I want to bring up, how long did it take for you to shrink? Because you had a tumor, correct? And it shrank.
I had a massive tumor. Yeah.
Right. How long did it take for it to shrink? Based off of you changing your diet.
Okay, so went to the urology oncologist. They found this massive tumor. They said there's nothing that they could do, because the surgeon couldn't take it out without taking out my organs surrounding it. They sent me to the oncologist, and I was supposed to get on chemo. I was on my diet for 9 days, and my tumor, my PSA went from 5,846 down to 3,600 in 9 days. So it dropped 2,200 in 9 days, which apparently is not normal at all, because I was supposed to get on the androgen deprivation therapy. I started like the day after I had that blood draw. So I hadn't started with the Zolupron, which is the testosterone blocker. So prior for me even getting on that treatment, my PSA dropped 2,200. And then I was on both the androgen deprivation therapy and my diet in 4 months. So I went from 9 days, I went from 5,000 down to 3,000. A month later, I went from 3,000, my PSA from 3,600 down to 31.2. A month later, I was like down to 0.3. So in about 4 months, I went from basically terminal cancer, PSA 5,800 down to 0.0, less than 0.1, and was in remission. So that's when my urologist sent me to my oncologist, my oncologist sent me to the urologist, back to the urologist to get my prostate taken out. He's like, tell him to take that out. And I'm like, okay. So I go back to the urologist, and he's like, I hear you want to have surgery. I'm just like, my urologist told me to tell you that I need to have surgery. And it's like, well, your numbers look great, but you have this mass. As far as he was concerned, the mass was still there. He's just like, well, let's take a look at it. So they do the ultrasound, and it's like, I hear, wow. I'm like, wow, what? It's like, wow, this is amazing. This looks like a different person. I'm like, I hope this is in a good way. And my tumor had shrunk 80% in just over 4 months. Yeah.
So did you get the surgery?
Good question. My doctor was like, oh, wow, I can work with this. I'm just like, oh, okay. So they were like, well, we'll have an MRI in like 6 weeks. We'll send you for MRI, see what we're working with for surgery. But yeah, we can definitely do surgery. I can definitely work with this. And so I'm thinking, okay, if my tumor has shrunk 20% each month, and I got another 6 weeks, I'm gonna get rid of this tumor. Where I made the mistake, and this is where people go, well, can I eat this and can I eat that? I had added some protein powder because I was being on the testosterone blockers. I was atrophying terribly because you need testosterone to maintain muscle. And so I was like, well, my number's down. I'm in remission. I can do some pea protein. I was using organic pea protein powder. And I'm thinking that should be fine. There's nothing in it, but just basically dried peas, mashed into a powder, make it into it, should be fine. Organic. And it didn't slow down my PSA drop, but it did slow the shrinkage of my tumor. So when I went and had I was just like, I'm thinking, oh, my tumor's going to be completely gone when I go get this MRI. And it was better, but it wasn't gone. So I got off the pea protein, and I had what I followed up was what's called an Axon PET scan, Axon PET scan. And that is for detecting what's supposed to be undetectable amounts of cancer. I ended up getting a new oncologist, and I met with a bunch of different people, including the president of the Prostate Cancer Foundation, because I achieved remission in May, and the story had gotten to the Prostate Cancer Foundation. And so I get this call, and I'm like, hi. It's like, Will Thompson? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, hi, this is so-and-so from the Prostate Cancer Foundation's president's office. I'm like, oh, okay. It's like, yeah, we hear that you had a PSA of 5,000 and now you're in remission. It's like, yeah. And so they were like, well, how long did it take you to go from 3,000? How many months did it take you to go from 3,600 down to 31.2? And I'm like, it didn't. It took me like 4 more weeks. And we're like, Dr. Simons is going to want to talk to you. Dr. Simons is the president of this. And like a couple weeks later, he called me up like 8 o'clock in the morning. He was like, Mr. Thompson.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Changing to say.
Sorry, go ahead.
And the doctor called me 8 o'clock in the morning. He's just like, so let me get this straight. It's just like, you had a PSA. I'm like, are you sure? I'm just like, yes, I had multiple tests. And so I went in. He said, can you bring in your scans and your blood work and everything? And I did. And he sat down and was just like dumbfounded. And he's like, oh, you should meet with this doctor, Dr. Christopher King.
Wait, I'm sorry. So did the tumor disappear? I mean, like by the time all of this is all said and done. So now the tumor is gone and you didn't even have to do surgery, correct?
Yes.
And that
Correct.
was all based off of the fact that you changed your diet and got off of animal products and meat and all of that kind of stuff, correct?
Well, it seems to be that's the only variable, because
right.
Androgen deprivation therapy, the testosterone blockers, from what I'm told, don't do that.
Right.
All of that is part of what's called palliative care, which is basically to make me feel comfortable, to shrink the tumor. But the goal when I was on that treatment was never to cure me. It was just basically to give me maybe more time and make me comfortable.
Right. Janora has a question. I want to make sure that she gets a chance to jump in there. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chrystee. And again, Will, what a story. And I still have crushed dreams from the earlier conversation about me giving up my meat. But this time I want to ask you, I know part of your story is incorporating visualization and meditation in terms of your healing.
Oh, God. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah. When, especially if you're paying attention I was a certified medical exercise specialist, post-rehab conditioning specialist. I worked with a cardiologist for years, one of the top cardiologists. I still refer clients to him and we talk. When you find out that you have a number that people who, don't, only have basically when they're dying, when your doctors tell you that there's nothing they can do for you, it is a horrifying place to be. I mean, they were kind enough to not give me a timetable. I didn't ask. I'm like, I was one of these people like, well, how much time do I have? I'm like, ooh, no. I was just made sure that my mind was focusing on my body, doing what it needed to do. So I would constantly tell myself, clearing, cleansing, shrinking, curing, clearing, cleansing, became my mantra, like clearing, cleansing, shrinking, clear. I mean, because I wasn't thinking about curing at that point. I was just like clearing, cleansing, shrinking. And I made for the first year, I made all my food. And it was interesting because I have a friend of mine that has a degree in psychology. And he was telling me when he was in school that just the process of making your food and being an active participant in your healthcare they found had physiological response. So it's definitely very important to have your mind in the right place, because what also happens when you have that kind of stress of like thinking that I'm dying every day is that I need some water.
Yeah, when you're dying,
it creates cortisol, which feeds the cancer. And so you do not want to you don't want to be in that mindset when you're trying to create what's called apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. You want these cancer cells to die. So I want basically everything that I eat is designed to kill these cancer cells. And that includes making sure that my mind and body are in that place where I create that biochemical reaction as best as possible.
So I want to, because we're going to be running out of time pretty soon. Are there any questions out there in the audience that you guys would like to ask? And for you guys, Abdul and Janora, are there any questions? I do have one question. My question would be, actually, I can ask it at the end. Do you guys have any questions that you guys wanted to, anything else we didn't get a chance to discuss?
Exercise. You didn't say anything about exercise, what you did for your exercise regimen.
Oh, good question. Lots of good questions. So yeah, no, being a trainer, I worked out, and actually until was it the second year, I was working out. It was like pretty much every day. I'm fortunate to live near Runyon Canyon, so I would hike every day. And what's really interesting is that cancer patients that go through chemo are traditionally told to rest because you're going to feel horrible. But recent studies have found that they did studies with chemotherapy patients that would work out after the therapy, and they actually did better. So,
interesting.
yeah, no, there's a lot of different things like exercising, promoting different, what they call killer cells, and even laughing. You know, there's putting your mind and body in the right state of mind, and has this ability to change your biochemistry to help in fighting cancer cells. So.
There is a question here. What do you eat when you have a sweet tooth? She asked this question earlier where she asked like fruit or something like that, but what do you eat when you have a sweet tooth?
One of my favorite things were frozen red grapes. Like I get the big like Christmas grapes, they call them or whatever. They look like almost like Christmas tree ornaments, and throw them in the freezer and pop them. It's like ice cream. I made a banana ice cream one time with like chocolate, get some dark chocolate and bananas. The thing is, you do want to watch your sugar intake. So I was very conscious because sugar feeds cancer cells. And I've been gone to the oncologist, and I've been sat there and had a friend ask, I heard that cancer, sugar feeds cancer. And the oncologist said, there's no empirical evidence. However, a PET scan uses glucose contrast agent, glucose is sugar, to find cancer in your body. So they literally, when you get a PET scan, when you have cancer, they do a PET scan. And they, especially if you have cancer like I had it, where they think it's metastatic and they're trying to figure out where that cancer is in your body, they do what's called a PET scan. And they use basically sugar to find that cancer in your body. So, yes, and they don't let you move. So because what happens is if you move, then your muscles want to access that glycogen, to feed those muscles. So you don't, they give you IV, give you the glucose, like don't move until they put you in the machine. So when people tell you that cancer, sugar doesn't feed on cancer, I don't know why they would say that. And you definitely want to be on what's called a low glycemic diet to help fight cancer. So,
Janora, did you have anything before?
Yeah, I guess my one last question would be, we've got an audience of, I'm sure, a lot of different people with a lot of different stories in their own journeys. For those who are struggling right now with a cancer diagnosis, what would you share with them?
What
encouragement would you give them? Like that?
I would, that's so complicated because I don't need to know what they're doing. I would ask them.
Well, then how about this? Maybe not necessarily in the aspects you've shared so far, which has been very concrete steps to take diet-wise. We talked about meditation. We talked about exercise. What about that mindset? Like that moment that you had to pick yourself back up after your diagnosis that helped you keep fighting and find your own specific way to win? that moment that got you there, what would you share with them from that space?
Okay. So when I get a referral, the first conversation we have to have is, are you willing to do everything in your power to save your life? Because that's going to determine your outcome. If you're not willing to do everything in your power to save that that's available to you to save your life, if you're not willing to do that, you're kind of giving up, and you can't give up because the cancer is not going to stop, but on its own, you got to make it stop. So you have to be willing to make changes. You need to, people are like, well, I don't like eating this and I don't like eating that. I'm just like, well, can we try to find something in that arena that works for you?
No, that's
because the option, unfortunately, most of the people that I talk to and aren't willing to make changes. Oh, I can't stop eating meat. Of course you can. I mean, everybody's a vegetarian. You just have to eat meat with it. So if you eliminate from the program, and you stop feeding this beast that's trying to consume your body, it's challenging. I mean, as somebody who, I've been a nutritional counselor for a long time, and I know it's hard for people, just to lose weight. So, to add that, but, carrying extra adipose tissue is not, in the long term, yes, it probably will contribute to your death, but not like cancer. And if cancer metastasizes and spreads to these other places like your bone, that's a very, difficult challenge. But it's not the fact that I'm here talking to you guys and I'm alive lets people know that it's possible. And that's why I was really happy, when I got the call. Well, I got an email from Harvard Medical School that was interested in looking at my case. Initially, they weren't actually interested in looking at my case because they had looked at my axial and PET scan, and on it says where I had the tumor resembled post-surgical scar tissue. So they were under the impression that I had surgery. I'm like, oh, you had debulking surgery, right? I'm like, no, read it again. It says resembles post-surgical scar tissue, but I didn't have surgery. And they were like, oh, okay. And so 2 days later, they were like, welcome to the study. And I was just like, thank you.
I was just going to say what I love about Will is when he was diagnosed, he did everything that he could. And I think part of our issue sometimes is that we just don't know what to do, how to do it. I do have a question, one quick question. There's a couple of other here. So everybody who's out there, thank you for staying and sticking with us. I know that there's a couple more questions that I want to make sure that we'll try to briefly answer. But I did this particular segment because I have a cousin that's dealing with it. His sister is on D. I know that you're here. I did this for her in particular. I did this for who I call family. Her daughter is going through chemo right now. She just had a baby. They had to take the baby out because she has cancer, lung cancer at like 30. And so I wanted to have this to encourage people to know that you can fight it and that you can survive if we do the research, if we find the right people that can help us get through it. So I just want you to know, Will, that Dee said, wow, he answered all my questions. It's like he read my mind. My brother's going to have chemotherapy soon. So that's my cousin there. Great discussion. I can't imagine cutting out all the animal products. Was meat and other animal products a big part of your diet before the switch? That's a good question. So can you briefly answer that real quick?
Oh my God, I used to eat so much protein. At one point, I would eat like 400 grams of protein a day. I would have like a dozen egg whites for breakfast. Being a trainer, more muscle,
Yeah.
definitely is good for business. The more muscle you have on your body, the more people think you know what you're talking about, which is it was fascinating. Like, I've had 3 back surgeries prior to going through all this. And I remember after one of my back surgeries, I went down, lost a bunch of weight, and then actually my first one, and I came back and I gained like 40 pounds in 10 weeks, eating a lot of animal protein, protein powder. And people all of a sudden were asking me these questions like I didn't know the answer when I was 40 pounds smaller. And I'm like, I'm the same guy, just I eat more food. So food definitely determines, who we are. One thing I didn't mention earlier is people talk about we are what we eat, but they don't think about it on a cellular level. And the human body basically replaces every cell in between 100 to 500 days. Every cell in our body is replaced. So you have a choice, especially for a cancer patient, of how are you going to replace this? Are you going to replace this with something that's going to make more cancer cells? Like if you eat other things like fried food, that we didn't get into because we talked about the mostly raw diet that I was on the first year. If you eat food that's corrupted, fried, deep fried, anything that's cooked at a high heat, especially carbohydrates, makes this plastic that's called acrylamide that is really carcinogenic. So just because you're eating plant-based doesn't mean that it's healthy for you. Like fried, it's like, oh, I'm eating a plant-based diet. What are you eating? Oh, I had French fries and beer for dinner. I'm like, oh my God.
Right.
You're gonna get alcohol.
What'd you say?
He never mentioned alcohol. Alcohol play a part.
Yeah, that's almost worse. That's worse than me.
There you go. I feel better now. I feel so much better now.
Okay. I'm glad you asked. See, I'm under the assumption, that if you have cancer that you wouldn't be drinking, but I've had this conversation with quite a few people, and I have to. That's the second question after. Are you willing to do whatever is in your that you can do to save your life? So then the next thing is like, are you willing to give up meat? Are you willing to give up alcohol? Alcohol is okay. Such a good question. People always tell me, oh, you can have a little bit. Like I stopped drinking. I never really drank. And people always would get on me, oh, you don't drink. I'm like, had I been a drinker, I would have been dead. I would have never made it this far. Because think about that. I didn't drink. I ate super clean. Didn't really eat meat. Didn't drink. I was living the fitness trainer lifestyle. And had I been drinking, and my PSA was 5,000, almost 6,000. Actually, on my scans, when I went to the ER, they said on my scans that my PSA was 6. So when they did the blood work, when I was I went to 2 different ERs. My PSA was 6,000. Had I been a regular drinker, I would have dropped dead in the street somewhere. People would have been like, oh, did you hear what happened about Will? I'm like, what happened to Will? Oh yeah, he had crazy cancer numbers. Like if I had been like a regular, just like, oh yeah, I can have a glass of wine. No. So let me put things into context as how bad alcohol is and how toxic it is. So when we drink alcohol, we have salivary amylase, saliva. There's an enzyme in there that converts alcohol into a carcinogen in seconds. So like not even mouthwash that has alcohol. Because you ever go to, I don't know if you notice when you go and you see the mouthwash, the alcohol-free mouthwash. Why would you need alcohol-free mouthwash? Because even that alcohol in the mouthwash will be converted to a carcinogen and absorbed through the water in your mouth.
Dang it, I just had some earlier today.
Like in seconds.
Hey,
so
Chris,
wow. Yeah.
Can we take a picture of Janora's face right now?
I know. She looking like I don't like this. Listen, she is. I know. And listen, we're gonna shut this down. But there's 2 questions that I have that I want to bring up. I wanted to ask you, one, is there a book that people can read upon? There is a book that I recommend called The Medical Medium. He talks about all foods that are just raw foods and certain foods that will help fight cancers. But do you have a book? And then the second question is, how can people get in contact with you if they have questions, if they want some workouts, things or whatever the case may be?
Okay, I think my website is on the screen right now.
It is on the screen.
ProTrainerLA.com. So if you go to ProTrainerLA.com or ProTrainerWill.com, that you can contact me through my website. You can email me. That would be preferred because I don't answer my phone when it rings with all the spam calls that I get. Everybody gets, even my mother is getting spam calls. So you can imagine with my number on the internet, if you call, leave a message, and I will get back to you, especially if you're dealing with cancer, or you know somebody that's dealing with cancer and they need some help, some guidance to understand the importance. Just so I don't think I mentioned that after I achieved my remission and met with the president of the Prostate Cancer Foundation and talking to a lot of different doctors, a lot of doctors were very skeptical, thought I was confused, didn't think I knew what I was talking about. So having multiple certifications, being certified as a USA boxing coach, USA track and field, USA weightlifting by the US Olympic Committee, I understand that it's not what you know, but what you can prove. So I did find the University of Arizona Med School has a program in cancer and nutrition, which I took and passed. It's for doctors. It's not for, trainers and gym rats. This is the courses. It's not. It's intense. Very informative. But so that, like, when I use terms like apoptosis, that's where I got this from. Like, everything that I'm saying has clinical studies behind it. There's nothing that I've done that doesn't have medical research behind it. None of this is my opinion. This is everything that I'm reiterating is all based off of clinical studies. And it's just that people go, oh, well, you're an anomaly. No, I'm an anomaly because, yes, I am an anomaly because I didn't have metastatic disease with a PSA that high. So that I do agree that part. But I was also willing to do, everything that science showed was relevant in changing my situation as far as my cancer progression. And people go, well, yeah, no, I don't go to the doctor either. I'm like, let's be clear. The reason I didn't have chemo, didn't have surgery, and didn't need radiation to achieve remission was I never told my doctor I wasn't going to do anything. I did everything that was like, don't go take this pill. I took the pill, take the stop taking the shot after the first year, had some side effects that weren't acceptable. But it's just, lost my train of thought.
That's okay. That's okay. Basically,
you got to do what you got to do. And make sure, a lot of people go, oh, stay off the internet. When I counsel people, and this goes back to the book, there's a book called How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. And he's my go-to reference source because all he does is studying these studies, these clinical studies, and publishes their findings. So when I'll send somebody a video that has basically his breakdown of these meta-analysis of these different studies, like vitamin D, cruciferous vegetables, garlic, turmeric. He's done the research, and there's no funding or anything. It's this There's no commercials on his videos, but the book is definitely called How Not to Die. I need to write my book because it'll be a lot easier to put all this information in one place instead of having to, give it out to person by person by person. So that is definitely my goal, hopefully in the next year, to get back on track.
So, everybody who's out there, let me just make sure that there's no more comments. Oh, that was me. I put the comment out there. I just want to send a shout out to Cheryl. You know what's going on, Cheryl. I did this for you. And the book, How Not to Die, and then how you can reach Will is through his website, which is protrainerla.com. I have watched him. I've sent so many friends his way. He's a great resource. And you have to be willing to want to live. You have to be willing to want to live and do like everything necessary. Mm-hmm.
And
go ahead.
So what I was saying before is, yes, I'm not just a guy who's a cancer survivor. I'm not just a guy that worked out, but I was, after I did this, I went to the University of Arizona med school program in cancer and nutrition, so that I'm not this is not my opinion. This is people go, well, what's your opinion? I don't have an opinion. Mm-hmm. All I know is what the science says. And I'm a beneficiary of that applied nutrition science.
So, do you guys have anything, Abdul or Janora, anything that you want to say before we jump out of here?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for all the information. Thank you for your participation, but specifically, thank you for making Janora look like she wanted to die. That made my whole night. All it did was make my whole night. But thank you.
Go ahead, Janora.
Ignoring the box that way, whichever way, ignoring this over here. I also say thank you, Will, for your resilience and for sharing it. And I just also want to thank those who have tuned in. Tangerine, you always make us smile. I will also chip in to get him a ring light so we could see him. And Yolanda was our guest from last week, part of Coleman Carroll Properties. Thank you for chiming in the whole time as well.
Yeah,
I know. Everybody,
it's always nice to have support.
I have a last thing. I have a cousin that 2 years ago was diagnosed with liver cancer and I think it was given like 14 months and he's still here.
Nice.
Hey,
so Mom is here too. So just wanted to make sure.
And he's my cousin's doing great.
I love it.
Right.
No, there you go. There's that message we were looking for. So we had a blank screen. I want to thank everybody once again for showing up, coming out. I really hope that this blesses you. If you know anybody who is battling with cancer in any way, shape, or form, please send this to them, forward this to them. Please put it on your page because so many people need to understand that diet can also help in so many different ways and our mental. We want to thank you, Will, for coming on. Thank you for being transparent and being open and also open to the people who will probably be reaching out to you because of this. Please get that book finished because the sooner you can get it, the more it's going to bless more and more people. And just so you know, we always do our BPS of the week. And our BPS of the week is all the people, especially the Black people out there who are going to the polls. You guys are killing it. My cousin is on. Lynn, I love you. All is going to be well. I know that you're going to do well. Please reach out to Will. So for all of you people who are out there voting, of course, next week we will be talking about the elections. And I'm going to leave it with that. Thank you again. We're going to say goodnight, and we will see you next week. And if you guys ever have any testimonies about what you've learned or heard from the show, please let us know. Please drop us a line so we can know that we're doing a good thing for you guys. All right, you guys. Have a good night. We'll see you guys later. Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Vote.
Thanks, Chryste.
Yes.
Yep.